All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on another edition of our Franchise Your Business podcast and webinar series. My name is Tom Dufour, and I'm the founder and CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And if you're new to us here, this session is designed to help give you practical insights and how-tos to be better as a business and a franchise company. And today's no different. So you're going to have to wait to learn a little bit more about that. Before we jump into our topic and guest today, I would love for you to please subscribe to our podcast, Franchise Your Business Podcast, on your favorite podcast service, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you prefer YouTube, go to our channel at bigskyfranchiseteam.com where you can get regular updates and watch this. And for those that are tuning in or familiar with some of our other content, you could subscribe to our second podcast called Multiply Your Success. Now, with that being said, I would love to introduce our guest today that's going to give us really great insight on purchasing. And I'll get into that here in just a little bit. But our guest today is Lee Plotkin. And Lee is the owner of LP Enterprises that helps small and medium-sized restaurant groups streamline purchasing with precision, insight, and proven expertise, saving time, reducing costs, and setting up the supply foundation for successful growth since 2001. So for more than 25 years here. And that's exactly what Lee and I are going to be talking about here, is really talking about this supply chain that's essential. So Lee, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to hopefully have a chance to share some important information with your audience.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that just starting maybe at a high level here, and maybe it's not such a high level, but with what you offer is really talking about this idea of why supply chain planning, why that's important, and maybe then going right into when's a good time to start even talking about it, like listening to an episode like this.
Yeah, great questions. So why it's so important to start early. There's a number of reasons. I always look at it from a purchasing agent standpoint anyways. And I always think the earlier you can get the purchasing team involved in any kind of process, the more visibility you're going to have into the market, the better opportunity to get great pricing, streamlined product availability, and things of that nature. When you're specifically talking about building out a system for franchise growth, it's become my experience that it's incredibly important to start early. For example, if you're looking to bring on new franchisees, if you're early in that development process, we typically like to get involved as soon as we can to be able to build out that structure in a cost-effective manner and establish good foundational programs. The financial foundation is one aspect, and then making sure the right people are in place from the supply team, that distributor, to facilitate growth. If you've got a great rep, then you've got a great program and a great company that's taking care of you. We like to jump in early in that process, and we can also get into some of the whys and the hows of doing that, and what we're doing right now for a couple of franchise operations.
Sure. Well, Lee, I realized here, I want to take a step back and have you help define what this planning is. So what is supply chain planning? I guess I should have started there. That should have been my first question.
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Yeah. So great question. So supply chain planning, especially when you're looking at growth, is look, first of all, looking at the products that you're using, and making sure you've got the quality products in place. And so now your supply person can go back to the manufacturers and start negotiating manufacturer deals. When you're talking about um, your distributor programs, we want to make sure that you're able to consolidate as much as is feasible on a broadline truck, or if you need a dedicated produce distributor, then how do you put that in place where that program can grow across the country? So everything that we do is with an eye to how do we reframe things to get product across the country as your concept grows. The earlier that you can do that, the better. Give you an example for one of our recent clients has 2 locations in the Midwest and is bringing on new franchisees. They just signed up a franchisee agreement for 5 locations. So we've got about 8, 9 months before that brick and mortar store is open. So we're going to consolidate product. The framework is pretty fragmented right now. So we're looking to consolidate product. We're bringing on a chemical program that's going to streamline things so you have contract pricing around the country.
Lee, I'm sorry to interrupt you here.
Yeah.
And this may just be my lack of some of the fine details of understanding your business. So when you were talking about with this example, with this franchisee that bought in a new multi-unit operator, this is a food service business, right?
Yes.
Is that okay?
It's a restaurant.
It's a restaurant.
Yes, it's a restaurant, and we're actually working for the franchisor.
Okay.
Yes.
And so when you say the product or such is fragmented, what's included in these fragmented pieces? What does that mean? Is it the actual food? Is it the paper goods? Is it what's part of that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for taking me a step back in that conversation. So you're absolutely right. So this particular client is buying most of their food product from a broadline distributor. Their paper goods, their chemicals are coming from a paper company. They're getting some products from a local specialty supplier, and there's a couple of those specialty suppliers, and there's a produce company in the mix as well. So now we're taking that process and we're asking the questions: what belongs where? What belongs on the broadline distribution truck? Now we can maybe get manufactured deals for paper and disposables. We can increase that supplier's delivery size, if you will, and we can reduce their margins accordingly and still make it profitable for that supplier. So now you have a program that might be more attractive financially to potential franchisees as you grow, and you're looking at margin improvements right off the bat. You're lowering delivering fees, you're reducing startup risks, and you have day one buying power. The fact that we're starting early in those processes allows us to structure that framework and get the right people in place.
So then, Lee, for this example, when you get involved, you're kind of acting as a if I understand correctly, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, almost like the purchasing manager or buyers or the buyer's agent for whether it be the franchisor in this instance, maybe some franchisees that engage with you independently, and then you're essentially helping them streamline and figure out the most cost-effective way to get the products that they or goods that they're looking that they would normally be using anyway.
That's exactly right. So we are an outsourced department for them. We just don't carry the burden and the high cost of having someone full-time, especially at this stage of their growth. And we have that visibility and that experience to be able to step back and say, okay, let's customize this based on what your needs are, how to get product across the country. Do we want to entertain conversations with your distributor to consolidate? Are you at a point in your maturity where we can actually take this program out to bid and structure the financial foundation that way? For this particular client, we want to structure the programs first and build that volume and build that infrastructure before anything would go out to bid. So we're customizing things. we're turning it around a little bit differently. And then we're going to look at produce programs. How do we have the same products across the country? Can we contract products with the growers that reach each one of those supply companies? What belongs on the produce truck? Are there specialty products that we could possibly add that Cisco won't carry? And those are some of the conversations that we're having right now surrounding that.
Great. So then one of the things I think about is what you mentioned before about really trying to give a cost savings
Yes.
to the ultimately to the franchisee in this instance, or
Yes.
in the
Yes.
franchise space where the franchisee would be have a saving. Do you is there the food business always has tight margins. It's
Yep.
always tight margins, and any way you can save a little bit here, a little bit there starts to add up by managing this thing and being a little proactive on it. So is there a typical range that you see cost savings fall within for what you're able to do? Is it hard to, I don't want to put you on a spot and say, well, Tom,
Yeah, I would, yeah, that's a great question. I've been asked that so many times, and there's no ways to truly quantify that. But, you can look at even dropping 2% in your food and packaging costs dramatically improves a new franchisee's cash flow their first year. I don't think those are unrealistic numbers when you're looking to either consolidate or take that program out to bid. I've seen greater, and we've seen a little bit lower, but 2% really makes it a big difference. It impacts your franchise community and your upcoming partners.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think, my viewpoint is that for the franchisor's job, if part of their job is to, I always encourage clients and franchisors to think about how can you help your franchisees find savings through whether it be bulk purchasing, economies of
Right.
scale, or having the ability to work, for example, with a group like yours and others, where if to try, I'm always thinking as from the franchisor mindset, I'd love to try to get the savings to my franchisee such that it essentially offsets the payment of the royalty, so that
Exactly.
that royalty becomes a non-issue with the savings, and maybe even in an ideal scenario do better. So you're part of this, I think, solution.
Absolutely. So we do that. That's what we're structuring through these bid outs, or we're creating that platform for that ROI to come back to their franchise community in a real effective way. And another big aspect in that whole equation is how do you get product across the country if you have proprietary product, if you have custom blended seasonings and marinades? How do you do that effectively without impacting their bottom line? And so what we have found, be happy to share with you and your audience, is we typically start with a redistributor called Dot Foods. If you're familiar with them, I'm not quite sure if that name rings a bell. They are the largest redistributor of product in the country. And we'll go back, for example, with this franchisor who had custom seasonings, marinade, and we asked the question, who in your manufacturer portfolio has the ability to do custom seasonings that have low minimum order quantities? If we can have them produce one pallet and put it into the DOT system, then we can average out freight across the country for all of their their franchisees, and all the Cisco's, the US Foods out there, the GFSs, the performance food groups can buy 1 to 2 cases a week from these redistributors. So not to get too much into the detail there, but it was on my bullet points to be able to bring up and help your community talk about how do you get that product across the country? How do you overcome those geographic challenges in a real cost-effective manner? To your point, Tom, that hits the franchisee's bottom line and brings more ROI back to cover those royalty costs.
Well, what you just shared makes me think a little bit about some clients I've worked with over the years that have some kind of a unique or proprietary product offering.
Yes.
And it always seems to be a pain point when maybe, let's say, this restaurant is franchising and they're in a specific region, and the supplier they find just happens to be local, and geographically they could maybe go 100 miles or
Right.
200 miles, no problem. But now all of a sudden you're starting to expand out of that zone, and there's this proprietary product. And
Right.
I remember years ago, I had a client in the that had custom. It was a meat type that he had custom made for. I think it was a Philly steak sandwich that he made at his restaurant. And he had to kind of source and figure out all of these, way locally it wasn't a problem, but as he started
Right.
expanding nationally, it became more problematic. And I've seen instances where clients have had a proprietary product, and the once let's just say, for example, someone's in the Northeast and now they're opening in Texas, and then they've got
Exactly.
and now they say, oh wow, my cost has tripled because my supplier has to ship it or try to keep it cool or cold or frozen. uh,
Right.
so talk through how you work with these unique or proprietary products, or even seasonings, sometimes seasonings and sauces that I hear clients talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. So great questions. So we'll use this particular client as an anonymous example, and so with their seasonings now, cut through our introduction to these manufacturers. And we have a contact at Dot Foods that we actively work with. We can identify potential partners who now can sign NDAs, and the customer can share recipes, and now they can start the R&D process. That's going to take several months to go through. And during that time, if the product works out well, we can talk and negotiate about pricing, flat pricing across the country. And so, as long as those customers are able to get a product with enough shelf life on it to be distributed around the country, for example, dry or frozen, now those products can be redistributed to the Cisco's around the world, the country. We also look at um, branded products, paper and disposables, because that's something that is so key and important to franchisors. If what do potential customers out there in the market see when your product leaves? Is it the bag? Is it the logo cup? Do you have a bowl that has your branding on it? What are they actually looking for that identifies your concept? And so now we get a chance to go back to ask those questions with either the paper company or Dot Foods manufacturers, and start that process again. And again, the goal is to get the right product at the right price, and make that price a flat price across the country, so that if you're in the Northeast, like you said, and you're opening in Texas, your Texas franchisee is not adversely impacted by high cost. If you have flat pricing, it makes sense for everybody, and they feel it's fair and equitable.
So one of the things that I've seen happen, my career's been spent working with emerging franchisors and emerging franchise brands, and as in general, the ideal best kind of strategy is to grow close to home if you can, in kind
Yes.
of concentric
Yes.
circles, ideally.
Yes.
Now, then reality hits,
Right.
and a family member or an old employee relocated out of region, or a long-term
Right.
customer that, if you maybe there was a restaurant in Florida and somebody relocated, and now they live in Ohio or they live out
Right.
in Wisconsin or something, and say, I love your business. I've always wanted to open one of these, and I'd love to run one here.
Yeah.
And now they get that up and going. And so now you have, maybe 5 or 6 restaurants, and they're kind of scattered about. So how do you help a brand that might find themselves in that situation where you don't have this concentration in one particular area, or does that not even matter? It just kind of got me thinking about it.
No, no, no. It matters a great deal. So it's something that I think is now becoming part of a lot of franchisors' conversations. And to your point, you're going to have the onesies and twosies that pop up in different parts of the country. So understanding that the more you're able to saturate a market, the better economics you're going to have, the better ability to get product across the country. Um, so when those kinds of questions come up, it's a great time to entertain conversations with your distribution partner. Once you level set that foundational piece and talk about where you're looking to open and identifying what products are truly important to your brand and what's realistic. At that point, you may have to identify some alternative products that this lone wolf can be using, if you will, in Texas and in the Texas market until that saturation occurs. Um, or using Hormel bacon, if you will. Everybody stocks Hormel bacon, for example. If you have a breakfast and lunch concept, is it time to look at a product that the Cisco or US Foods or your distributor stocks across the country, that it's a national branded product. We look at it as what's a realistic alternative, and we try to get way ahead of that foundation. If we have to sometimes, and if it's a dry product or if it's a paper product, we can do auto shipments, and those can be through Dot Foods or from a manufacturer to the distributor, but that adds cost to the equation. But it's a conversation that happens quite a bit now. I know with this particular customer, uh, they have 5 units that were sold, and 3 are going to be in one area, and 2 are going to be in another area. So they're starting to build out those areas for future growth, knowing that they're only going to open with one. And then those locations have to be they are in close proximity to the franchisor's locations, but they're going to run into that situation, and we're going to have to approach that as we get closer. Great questions, great points.
Very good. Well, Lee, something just as I guess a question for someone that ends up listening in,
Yeah.
how does this process work, for a franchisor, or maybe a franchisee listens to this and their franchisor is not signed up, but they're looking for some support.
Yeah.
Can you work? I guess let's start with that franchisee. Can you help that franchisee on a one-off basis, or does it really need to run through the franchisor?
Well, it has to run through the franchisor. We're always there to give information, happy to share and pay things forward. The franchisor has uh, the contractual arrangements to have the specs in place and who that franchisee is going to be using. So the benefit will be to the franchisee. So typically, our work is with the franchisor. We start as early as 1, 2 locations. They start having the conversation, and then we go up from that point. So this franchisor has 2 locations, and now we're building out the infrastructure for that company to be able to grow effectively. So really, we're happy to have those conversations at any point in the franchisor's growth. If a franchisee has questions, we're always going to refer them back to the franchisor to make sure that things are in contractual compliance. But we can also give them some questions to ask and be able to guide them if they're running into some situational problems.
Great. And for that franchisor, Lee, that listens into this or hears what's going on, someone says, "Okay, Lee, you caught my attention. I've got an interest in at least starting a conversation or learning a little bit more." What are the steps? What should somebody do?
Well, the first thing they could do is reach out. just reach out and the information that they probably want to have is, how many locations do you have now? Give us an idea of what your annual volume is or your annual food and beverage sales and your food cost. We can back it out from there, and we can start a conversation with that franchisor at whatever stage they're at. I'd be happy to share my cell number on this call if that was of interest to you, and my email. And I think you guys will have that on your podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll make sure we list your contact information. And what's the best website for someone to go to that they might be able to pull up? And we'll include that in the show notes also.
Yes, it's my name, www.leeplotkin.com.
Perfect. Well, Lee, I guess as we're drawing near to a close here, is there anything you really wanted to make sure that you were able to share or get across that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Yeah, I mean, I just would reinforce, several things. Establish that core foundation for yourself. If you're a franchisor, you want to lock your specs in early. What's very important to your brand, and how much can be consolidated realistically, and at what point in your growth. I think those things, if the franchisor starts with those key points, I think that's a really good basis, and they'll become able to come up with some good questions for the next steps.
Perfect. Well, Lee, thank you so much again for being here. And as you said, it's leeplotkin.com to contact and get some information, at least get a conversation started. We will share that in the show notes. And for those of you listening in live, or will have this published shortly on our podcast and YouTube channel. And Lee, just want to say thank you so much again for being here and for sharing this information today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Tom. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you and your audience have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to having you back on the next one. Thank you so much. Have a great day.